Welcome to Magnificat TV's news program, dedicated to providing news from the Church. Today is Wednesday, February 15, 2023, and these are our news. Nicaragua's dictator Ortega has sentenced a Catholic bishop to 26 years in prison for criticizing the country's dictatorship. The Continental Synod of the Church in Europe has highlighted the existence of two opposing camps on how the Church should relate to society. The Spanish bishops have criticized the Constitutional Court's decision to allow free abortion up to 14 weeks of pregnancy. Bishop Bonilla has sharply criticized the Spanish Conservative Party for welcoming the ruling, allowing the free abortion up to 14 weeks in Spain. Aid to the Church in Need has sent emergency aid to the victims of the earthquake, which has already claimed more than 100,000 victims in Turkey and Syria. The persecution against the Church in Nicaragua, promoted by the dictator Ortega, has condemned Monsignor Alvarez, Bishop of Matagalpa, to 26 years in prison.
Monsignor Alvarez, Bishop of Matagalpa and Apostolic Administrator of Esteli, has been sentenced to 26 years and 4 months in prison after being accused of treason in a sentence handed down by the court of Nicaragua's communist dictatorship. Just one day before his sentence was handed down, the Nicaraguan regime had deported a total of 222 political prisoners to the United States. Among them were the 8 people, lay people and priests, who were accompanying the bishop in the Archbishopric of Matagalpa when he was arrested by the police. Monsignor Alvarez refused to be deported, so the judge declared him a traitor to the homeland and sentenced him to 26 years imprisonment. He also ordered him to be held in a prison for common prisoners and placed in a small cell where there were already almost 40 prisoners.
The internal division of the Church has become evident at the continental European phase of the Synod of Bishops, which took place this week in Prague.
The division in the Church is becoming more and more evident, and this was evident at the Continental European Synod. While some cardinals and bishops defended the Vatican's position, the Germans called for rebellion and rejected what the Holy See had ordered them to do. The Archbishop of Prague opened the European part of the World Synod. In his sermon, he was highly critical of the results so far of the survey carried out in preparation for the Synod. It turns out that many people active in the Church know neither the Bible nor the teaching of the Church. This is a bad testimony to the word of the Church leaders. That is why it is now necessary to listen to the voice of God and ask, what does Jesus, who founded the Church, tell us? The Czech prelate asked. For his part, Cardinal Ouellet, prefect of the dicastery for bishops until his successor takes office, stressed the need to maintain the biblical teaching on men and women. Ouellet called on participants in the synodal stage to base their deliberations and decisions on Christian anthropology as set out in the Bible. He warned against interpreting the Word of God in a way that contradicts what it actually says. The other sector was represented mainly by the Germans. The co-president of the German Synod, Irme Stetter-Karp, said in her speech that the exclusion of women from ordination to the priesthood is driving women out of the Church. She was joined by the Bishop Bausting, who said he favored a change in the acceptance of homosexuality and the way the priesthood is organized. To persist in dual anthropology and confine women to this space, outside ordained ministry tends to drive women, especially young women, out of the church in the 21st century, Stella Karp said. Bishop George Bautzing, president of the German Bishops' Conference, told delegates to the European Synod that the German Synod calls for new ways of organizing the priesthood and that the church must be open to people whose lifestyle doesn't conform to the norms of the catechisms, including homosexuals.
The Spanish Constitutional Court has upheld the law allowing free abortion up to the 14th week of pregnancy. The bishops have criticized the ruling.
Just before the Constitutional Court approved the ruling on the abortion law approved by the government of Rodriguez Zapatero and maintained by the government of Mariano Rajoy, the Spanish bishops had launched the campaign You Have Rights on the website of the Bishops' Conference. The president of the Episcopal Subcommission for the Family and the Defense of the Life, Monsignor Mazuelos, has criticized the Constitutional Court's endorsement of the abortion law, which for the first time set time limits for abortion. Monsignor Mazuelos, Bishop of the Canary Islands, said that it is sad to see how the Constitutional Court has managed to endorse a law that is unjust and ideological and against science, which take away the dignity and respect for life of certain human beings because of their age. He also asked the Court of Guarantees whether the Constitution endorses the inequality that the law introduces with those who suffer from Down syndrome, who can be killed until they are 5.5 months old, which he described as truly barbaric. For his part, the Secretary General and spokesman for the Spanish Episcopal Conference, Francisco César García Magán, described Thursday the 9th of February as a sad day for Spanish society. In Spain, there are human beings whose human rights are not recognized, he said. The president of the Episcopate, Monsignor Ormela, posted on a social network, Day of Incoherence. We protect the life of animals and forget to care for the life of human beings in their moments of maximum fragility. I pray that the Lord will enlighten the conscience of those who have to make these political and legal decisions. First, it was to prevent clandestine abortion, then to decriminalize it in 3 cases, and then the 3rd case is transformed into a sieve. Then came the terrible qualitative leap of transforming it into a right. Now, progressivism promotes it by making it a banner of democratic health, said Monsignor Arguello, Archbishop of Valladolid. Either the principle of non-contradiction has been abolished and we are facing a prevarication. In 1985, the Constitutional Court recognized the right to life of the nasciturious, and now it endorses the constitutionality of a law that allows free abortion up to 14 weeks, was the reaction of Monsignor Munilla, Bishop of Alicante.
Following the Spanish Constitutional Court ruling on abortion, the leader of the Conservative Party, Núñez Feijóo, expressed his joy. Monsignor Munilla has criticized him.
On Thursday, Spain's Constitutional Court upheld the abortion law of Zapatero's socialist government, 13 years after the Popular Party finally filed an appeal of unconstitutionality against the law. Now, after the ruling against the appeal, the president of the party that filed it has declared that he was happy with the result. Faced with this inconsistency, the Bishop of Orihuela, Alicante, Monsignor Munilla, on his program Sexto Continente on Radio María, commenting on the statements of the president of the Conservative Party, Núñez Feijóo, said, "Now the president of the Popular Party applauds the ruling of the Constitutional Court, when 13 years ago his party had lodged an appeal of unconstitutionality, and now the Popular Party comes along and applauds it, and says that this is the Spain of today and the Spain of the future." Obviously, Munilla added, The popular party's betrayal of the cause of life is total and absolute. It can go no further. Obviously, Munilla added, the popular party betrayal of the cause of life is total and absolute. It can go no further. They have completely assumed all the parameters of the most radical left when it comes to recognizing abortion as a right. How can anyone with a clear conscience, who knows that the gift of life is inviolable, support such a political party?
The Catholic organization Aid to the Church in Need has sent emergency aid to help the victims of the earthquake in Turkey and Syria.
The earthquake in the border region between Turkey and Syria has killed and injured more than 100,000 people and destroyed entire villages. The Catholic organization Aid to the Church in Need immediately sent aid to the area. Aid to the Church in Need immediately sent church representatives €500,000, taking advantage of the fact that it already had 8 projects underway in the same area, where there are important Christian communities. We are working with the Franciscans of Latakia, who are providing blankets and food. The Armenian Orthodox have prepared a project to provide medicines. The Institute of the Incarnate Word wants to collaborate in a project for the affected families, and we have a project with the St. Vincent de Paul Society to provide personal hygiene care for the elderly who live alone, said the head of the Catholic NGO in the area. The 9 Christian churches present in the Aleppo, the most affected Syrian city, are working together to coordinate the emergency. The priority, after taking care of people's basic needs, is to assess the damage to homes and make the necessary repairs so that families can return to their homes as soon as possible.
Our editorial this week is devoted to commenting on the division of the Church in Europe, highlighted by the Continental Synod. St. John Paul II that in Europe the Church had 2 lungs, the Eastern one, and more given to their spirituality, contemplation, liturgy; the other, the Western one, more given to activity. I don't know what the Polish Pope will say about what is happening at the moment in Europe. Perhaps more than 2 lungs. He will say that there are 2 souls engaged in a distributed civil war. This became clear this week at the Continental Synod. The name of the assembly held in Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, where the representatives of the 39th Bishops' Conference of the Churches on Pilgrimage in the Old Continent met. On the one hand, leading archbishops and cardinals have spoke out, especially in the homilies and in the morning masses. In the same line as the Vatican, it is open to clear oppositions to the conclusions of the German Synod. The Archbishop of Prague, for example, at that opening Mass of the Continental Synod, which I repeat, it is contribution that the continent wants to make the General Synod for the whole Church. The Archbishop of Prague said that Church cannot adapt to the world, a very clear message addressed to its German neighbors. Cardinal Ouellet, who is one of those who signed the letter together with Cardinal Parolin and Cardinal Adaria, the letter forbidding the Germans to set up synodal councils. Cardinal Ouellet also, at the opening Mass, another date of this Continental Synod, said that the teachings of the Bible on the question of the gender must be taken into account, and that the Church cannot adopt this fluent gender concept of the so-called gender ideology. Even a man who certainly does not pass for a conservative Cardinal Grech, who is the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops, has said that the Synod aim to clarify the nature, the role of the Church, and not to destroy the nature of the Church. Of course, all three have spoken in line with what the Pope wants, with what the Vatican says. One soul of the Church in Europe. Another soul, completely confronted. The Germans in this same Continental Synod have intervened, and what they have said is that the Church has to adapt certain things if she does not want to go to hecticum and disappearance. And they have asked publicly, officially at least, these three things: female priesthood, acceptance of homosexual acts, homosexuality full practice in all its dimensions as something that is not sinful, and modification of the role of the priest and therefore of the bishop, along the line of the synod councils, according to which the priest and the bishop no longer have the function, the service of the government, but that service is the function is entrusted to the laity people. The priest will be one word in the synod council, the bishop will be one word, but he will not have the last word. This is what the Germans have asked, and for they have also said, they have asked others to join them in their demand for profound changes in the morals and the structure of the Church. The Germans are not alone. The Germans certainly have at least the Belgians, the Swiss, and certainly some of Austrians on their side. And not only that, but also this week, the Archbishop of San Diego, the Cardinal Archbishop of San Diego, recently appointed Cardinal by Pope Francis, Cardinal Mag Elroy, in an interview with the Jesuit magazine American, has asked the Church to accept gender ideology once and for all, to accept this concept of fluid sex and not binary male-female, but to accept the essential basis of gender ideology, because he said the teachings of the Church have no scientific basis. Well, two warring souls. Not only the Church in Europe, but above all in Europe. Two warring souls which, as the Lord had said, when a house is divided in civil war, it is destroyed, and a kingdom is destroyed, house after house. This year, hecatomb in Germany regarding the apostasies of Catholics has even been greater than the previous year. More than 3,000 people, Catholics have officially left the Church. More than 3,000 have officially apostatized from the Church. It is already an unstoppable tide that is growing year after year. Well, the liberals, those who are calling for this reform, homosexual sex, women's priesthood, that the priest or the bishop no longer lead either the diocese or the parish, they said that this is precisely the cause of this hecatomb of the apostasies happening, and this immense number of apostasies happening. The cause it is not to adapt to the world, that the Church does not accept what the world demands, and what they propose that, thinking that this way people will not leave the Church if the Church adapts to the world. The other sector says that this is false, and that it is the example of the Protestant churches more and more adapted to the world, and yet they lose a huge number of faithful every year. And they certainly fidelity to the word of God, and tradition, because they say, remembering the word of the Lord, if salt becomes tasteless, it is not good for throwing it on the ground to be tripped by men. But while in Europe and the Church as a whole, we are at a conflict over what the mission of the Church should be, and what its teaching and doctrine should be. In the world, many things are happening, and the Church is less and less able to give a word that it is heard, that it is not only heard, but also follow, or at least partially hit it. In Europe itself, the situation in Ukraine is appalling, and according to what we are seeing, it is going to get worse. When the year is up, on the 24th, another great offense is already being announced with surely more destruction and thousands more death. Very close to Europe, Turkey, Syria, revenge by horrific civil, but are now suffering the consequences of devastating earthquake that has already left more than 100,000 casualties, including deaths and injuries, something truly dreadful. That is, it is catastrophe. But these people have suffered in this area between Turkey and Syria, but not only there. In Nicaragua, the communist dictator Ortega has put a bishop in prison with the common prisoners in a very small environment, a very small room with more than 30 common prisoners, because the bishop has refused to deport to the United States, which is what the other 8 priests and lay people who were in prison with him in the cathedral of the diocese have accepted, but the bishop not. Today silence, total silence. While the church is fighting, the others are doing acts of evil. And if we look at what is happening in Africa with the continuous massacres of Christians and therefore also Catholics at the hands of Muslim radicals, or what is happening in China, where despite the secret pact with the Vatican, persecution of the church does not cease, does not stop. It is necessary, it is imperative that this internal civil war in the church comes to an end. It is must. We cannot give a word to the world if we are the conflict among ourselves without knowing what we are or what we should be. The church, by the willing of its founder, our Lord Jesus Christ, has to be the light of the world. But how are we going to be the light of the world and salt of the earth if we do not know even what we are? If we do not know what to teach? If we have abandoned, or some say that to abandon our roots? If we have to abandon the word of God when it does not agree with what the world wants? If we have to abandon the 2,000 years old teachings that constitute tradition when it does not agree with what the world wants? How are we going to speak to the world? To this world that needs our voice, that needs our light, even does not follow it, it needs it. How are we going to speak to the world if we are at odds with each other and we don't even know what we have to say? Civil war within the church, civil war in the church as a whole. Once again, let us ask the Lord the miracle for this to end as soon as possible. See you next week, God willing. We will continue to keep you informed of what is happening in the church, but in the meantime, you can visit our website, www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.